Hello ladies and gents, Jarek Defiler the Patient Gamer here to discuss beloved indie title Slay the Spire. Published by Humble Bundle and developed by Seattle-based indie studio MegaCrit, Slay the Spire is a unique roguelike in that it's actually a deck-building card game. Now, it wasn't the first of its genre, but there aren't a lot out there, and Slay the Spire seems to be among the best, alongside Griftlands, which I have yet to play. We'll probably do a video on that later down the road once I get my grubby little mitts on it, but for now, Slay the Spire. The lads and lasses at MegaCrit really knew what they were doing here, as everything in Slay the Spire is built very carefully and fairly in order to ease the player into the genre. If you aren't familiar with roguelikes or deck builders, then I would recommend Slay the Spire as a start because it is very easy to get into and learn. However, like any great game, although it is easy to learn, it's still hard to master, which is great because that means it has something for everyone. If Slay the Spire were a woman, I'd make sweet, sweet love to it. Anyways, the game starts off with one singular character, the Ironclad. With the highest baseline hit points of all the characters, the Ironclad is a good one to start with because he has wiggle room to learn the basics and experiment with builds. He specializes in manipulating exhaust and strength, allowing for some powerful hits. After him, you can unlock the Silence. She is a rogue-themed character who specializes in combos with shivs and some nifty poison builds. I find her to be my second favorite because she's just a lot of fun and is capable of some gnarly damage. Once you've gotten a bit of her under your belt, you can then unlock the Defect, who is my personal favorite and the first one I beat the game with. The Defect is the most unique of the characters in my opinion, due to it having these orbs that can gain different properties. You have frost orbs that give block, lightning orbs that zap your foes, dark orbs that gain power over your turns, allowing you to deliver some devastating one-shots, and even plasma orbs that give you more energy per turn. Energy is your resource for playing cards, much like Hearthstone's mana, except in Slay the Spire the default energy is 3. Also, with the exception of plasma orbs, you can increase the power of said orbs with a stat called Focus. The Defect is just awesome. I remember one time I did an orb build on it and I had like 11 orbs of all sorts and I was just a wrecking ball of unstoppable power that couldn't die. It was most likely thanks to luck of the draw rather than skill because I suck at video games, but it was a blast and one of the most fun playthroughs I had in the game. But it doesn't end there. The Defect also has some really fun power cards that allow for great ramping and sustain. Before you know it, you have a dozen orbs that are just swirling around your head and you're busting out all these combos, zapping people, getting all this block damage and one-shotting them with your dark orbs. It's just a load of fun. Really fun stuff. Once you test your mettle with the Defect, you get to unlock arguably the most powerful character, the Watcher. Now, in all honesty, the Watcher is my least favorite. She's a stance-changing class, and quite frankly, I never really cared for stances in video games outside of Warriors and WoW and Udyr in League of Legends. But I know there are those of you out there that rather enjoy that sort of thing, so the Watcher might be right up your alley. That said, what makes the Watcher so powerful is her Wrath and Divinity forms, devastating stances capable of insane damage. With Wrath, your damage, as well as damage taken, is doubled. Now this can be tricky, but if done smartly, unlike yours truly, you can create some insane combos capable of one-shotting bosses. Divinity is a bit more difficult to obtain because you have to use cards to increase a stat called Mantra. Once your mantra reaches 10, then you automatically enter the Divinity stance, which does a whopping triple damage for the remainder of that turn. With the luck of the draw as well as some brain meat power, the Watcher can mow her way through enemies like a stampeding rhino in a maternity ward. She's also really great at card management. The Watcher has the Retain ability, which allows her to hold onto cards after each turn. She also has the ability to garnish some massive energy using her Calm stance, which grants 2 energy upon exiting it. This allows for some absolutely sexy power plays that leave even the strongest of foes a pile of oozing goo on the Spire floor. Now, like most roguelikes, you find yourself progressing through some sort of level system. The most common being something like delving deeper into a dungeon a la Enter the Gungeon, or climbing a tower like in Hades. Slay the Spire follows the latter. You make your way up a, spire, taking out enemies left and right with the occasional rest at a campsite or gold spending at a shop. The map layout allows you to take multiple procedurally generated paths on each run, letting you decide your fate, to a certain degree. Make your way to the boss to finish that act and proceed into the next. There are a total of 4 acts, with the 4th being more of a bonus with one final boss of bosses that you can only unlock by completing the game with each character, minus the Watcher. And boy is it a tough one. You will need to thoroughly prepare for it as someone who's new to the game. I think I've beaten it like once, albeit I don't have that many hours into the game, and again, I just suck at video games, despite my love for them. As far as the mechanics go, Slay the Spire has virtually a perfectly paced system. Roguelikes kind of need that fast-paced action due to the nature and restarting and replaying over and over, but Slay the Spire has found a nice medium in that the player pretty much controls the pace, which makes it perfect. You can take as long as you want on a turn, or you can speed through it willy-nilly, no questions asked. It's all up to you. Being that the game is solely single player, there are no timers or rush mechanics, it's just you and the cards, and I like that. I love when developers allow the player to play the game the way they wish, rather than how the developers want them to. Makes for good games. Here's looking at you, Risk of Rain 2. Needless to say, replayability in Slay the Spire is very, very high. Not a surprise given this is the nature of roguelikes and why they tend to garner such big audiences. More bang for your buck, and here is no exception. You have 4 characters with a plethora of different builds and playstyles, multiple bosses to try and defeat, ascension tampering allowing for more difficult and rewarding runs, and a huge amount of cards to tinker around with, giving the delectable collectible card game enthusiast a sensual pleasure ride of stats and energy costs. You know you love them numbers. Aesthetically, I love the art style of Slay the Spire. It's very simple but unique and captures a certain rugged feel of some grotesquely mutated realm where all the creatures and inhabitants struggle day by day to survive. You can check out some of my playthroughs to see the art style in more detail if that's your thing. I have a few runs uploaded on my Patient Gamer Plays playlist where I get my ass kicked a whole bunch. Woohoo! Now, full disclosure, I am not familiar with the game's lore and have yet to look into it, which is mainly how I operate with roguelikes. I tend to just dive into the gameplay because majority of the time, story isn't the main focus of the game, unlike some RPGs for example, or even Hades. So I don't know how the story fares or why you're climbing your way up this spire, but that's fine because I don't need to know in order to enjoy it. But given the quality of the rest of the game, I'm sure the story is fine, just fine. And last but not least, the music. As I mentioned in most of my videos, I'm a big fan of video game soundtracks, and if you are too, I recommend you check out my video entitled Highly Recommended Video Game Soundtracks, the re-upload, if you want to hear some truly great video game music. That video is meant to be listened to rather than watched, so good for the long drive to work and whatnot. Okay, enough shilling. That said, Slay the Spire has a great soundtrack that has an almost Harry Potter / Tim Burton / steampunk-like vibe to it. It's fantasy-driven and powerful, and very heavy on the horns and strings. Composed by Clark Aboud, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, it lends a somewhat desperate feel to the game that gives you a sense of trudging along, fight after fight, struggling to make it to the top of that spire. Good stuff. As far as criticisms go, I honestly can't really think of any, and I've tried. I could say that there are some cards that seem useless, but quite frankly there are no doubt some hardcore CCG fans out there that are way smarter than me that can make some crazy awesome builds with them. Most likely I just don't have the brain for it, and even so, what CCG doesn't have some cards that are a bit underwhelming, eh? So my criticism is probably not warranted. All in all, Slay the Spire is a delightful romp that is great for learning the roguelike and CCG genre without smashing you over the head with difficulty walls or complex mechanics right out of the gate. It's also on mobile, so if that's your thing and you want something to kill the time at a mundane job or while you're waiting at the mechanics, then give it a go. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. It's truly a stellar game. Thanks for watching, and if you don't mind, please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It'll help me out a great deal. If not, the dislike button is right there, and hopefully I'll do better next time. Here's a taste of the soundtrack to wet your whistle. This has been Jarek Defiler, recommending the roguelike card game, Slay the Spire. Take it easy, folks.